the Everything But Politics podcast.
Welcome back to the Everything But Politics podcast, a show that highlights the lives of the extraordinary. My name is Merrick Leeser, alongside Ethan Leeser and Evan Leeser. And joining us today from the great state of Missouri is Mr. Eric Greitens. Eric, welcome to our show.
Merrick, it is great to be on with you. Evan, pleasure. Ethan, pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. And Eric, we want to begin by thanking you for your service to our great country. So thank you for all you've done.
Absolutely.
You guys are so welcome, man. You know, it was a real pleasure. I'll tell you, one of the highlights of my past week was on Veterans Day. I actually went to my boys' school. Joshua and Jacob are 9 and 11. And for their Veterans Day ceremony, Joshua carried in the flag. And that was actually
cool.
It was a really special moment for me. It was a really special moment. So thanks, guys. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm
Beautiful.
sure that was special. I'm sure that day is always special, but seeing that and having that memory has got to be hit a little different.
No doubt.
Yeah, you know, it is powerful. You know, you go and you serve, and one of the reasons why you serve is that you want to preserve the country. You want to serve the country. You want to be able to pass it on. And to actually see, you know, my boys in the audience and see Joshua kind of carrying up the flag and saluting the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance there, as you know, in fifth grade, it was sweet and it was cool. It was a great moment.
No
Awesome.
doubt.
Well, Eric, like I said when we began, this show is one that highlights the lives of the extraordinary, the extraordinary life you have lived. So something I want to begin with, my first question is, also, you've seen a lot in this world, so we'll get into that as well. But for those that need saving, but they don't want to save themselves, where's the best place to begin when dealing with a situation like that?
Oh, you started with all the easy questions, Merrick, huh? Yeah. I mean it's tough. I'll tell you, let me just reflect on this, that it's one of the toughest human situations. And it has strategic implications for nations. It has implications for communities, and it obviously has implications in everybody's individual personal lives. But yeah, at the end of the day, one of the things that you learn is that you cannot save someone who is not interested in saving themselves. You cannot want it for somebody more than they want it for themselves. Now, you can help them, you can support them, you can be on the path with them. But if somebody's in a very, very tough circumstance, you can support them, you can provide them models, you can provide them friendship, you can teach them Stoic techniques about premeditation of evils, you can teach them gratitude techniques, you can teach them how to serve. But at the end of the day, they do have to make that decision for themselves. And it's a really tough thing when you find people, especially people who you love, and they're not ready to do that yet.
Well, for those that aren't ready to do that yet, and if you do try to show them that support, how do you differentiate between being supportive and being an enabler?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I'll reflect on this a little bit about my experience working with returning wounded and disabled veterans coming back from Iraq. So I'll just give you kind of 30 seconds of background on this. Was that when I was serving in Iraq, my team was hit by a suicide truck bomb. I was very fortunate in that my wounds were minor, but a lot of the guys who I served with were hurt far worse than I was. When I came home, what I noticed in visiting the VA and visiting with some returning wounded Marines and soldiers and sailors and airmen was that you ask them, what do you want to do when you recover? And they all said, I want to return to my unit. Now, the harsh reality was for a lot of those men and women is that they were not going to be able to return to their unit right away. These are guys who had lost arms, one had been shot through the neck, lost legs, dealing with traumatic brain injury. And what was happening at the time was that the whole country was often treating them as if they were charity cases. And you can imagine what this does to a man's sense of purpose. You know, he used to be a Marine sergeant in Afghanistan. He's got a uniform on, he's got a team around him. And then all of a sudden he wakes up in the hospital and people are asking him if he wants a free gift basket, if he wants a free blanket, if he wants a free trip. And they're treating him like a charity case. And sometimes people would start to internalize that idea. Oh my gosh, is this what I'm good for now? So what I did was I donated my combat pay, and we started an organization called The Mission Continues to help returning wounded and disabled veterans serve again. So we put these guys back to work at Habitat for Humanity, at Big Brothers Big Sisters, at Boys and Girls Clubs. And what happened was, as they started to serve other people, they rebuilt their sense of purpose. Now,
Beautiful.
yeah, it was an incredible venture. And we really helped to shape the way a whole generation of veterans came home. Now, to your question, Merrick, we were also dealing with a lot of men and women who'd come home, and because of what happened in terms of their sense of identity and purpose, they might have started drinking. They were isolating. We worked with some men and women who'd spent weeks, sometimes months, alone in their apartment. Essentially, what we did is we went to them and we said, "Look, we believe in you. We believe that you still have something to offer to the community. You still have something to offer to the country. And here's some models. You know, here's guys who have lost eyes, lost hearing, lost limbs, dealing with TBI, PTSD, and they are out serving. Other men have walked this path before you, and we believe that you can do it too. But everyone has to make that choice themselves about whether or not they're going to believe in themselves. And for a lot of men and women who were dealing with opioids at the time, dealing with alcohol, that support has to be given, I believe, and shaped for them in the way that you're showing them that you believe in who they can be, and you see this potential in them, maybe if they don't even see it in themselves. Where it becomes enabling is when the support that you're giving allows them to continue in the same self-destructive habits. So one of the things that you have to do for people who you love is you have to say to them sometimes, "Listen, man, I love you. I'm not going to let anybody hurt you. I'm not going to let anybody talk bad about you, and that includes you. I'm not here to be here for you while you're running yourself down. I'm not here to be here for you while you're destroying yourself, because I care about you. And because I care about you, these are the kinds of things that we're going to do together." So it's such an important question, Merrick, and it's a tough situation for people, especially when you're dealing with folks who are facing addiction issues.
What's up, guys? One podcast, one song every week. Podcast on Mondays, music on Fridays. Check it out.
You weren't only in the military, you were a Navy SEAL. Someone who becomes a Navy SEAL, what are the key differentials between someone who became one and did not?
Yeah, so Evan, it's such a good question. So I'll tell you. So SEAL team training, as you know, and probably most of your audience knows, it does have a reputation for being the hardest military training in the world. And in our class, I was in Bud's class 237. We started with over 220 guys in the class, and we graduated with 21 originals. So,
Wow.
and the guys who come into the class, the guys who are showing up to Bud's training are normally pretty sharp and capable guys, right? I mean, they're high school track champions and state wrestling champions and, college football players, right? So you got a good group of guys who are coming at the very beginning. And one of the things I'll tell you, Evan, that I learned is that when I went to Bud's, if you would have asked me when I went, "Do you think you'll be able to pick out the guys who will make it?" I would have thought, I could probably tell who's gonna make it. And I quickly realized that you couldn't. You couldn't tell who was gonna make it when it became really hard. Because the pain that you go through in Bud's, the difficulty, it's beyond merely the physical. I mean, people hear about the 4-mile runs in soft sand and the 2-mile ocean swims and the obstacle course and the drown proofing where they tie your feet together and tie your hands behind your back and they throw you in the pool and all of these things. They hear about all of these, we call them evolutions. They hear about all these difficult evolutions. But really, the test of buds is that the whole process lasts 6 months. It's grueling. And you go through Hell Week where you only sleep for a couple hours over the course of the entire week. So you get to a place where you really have to face your inner self. And the two qualities that I saw, Evan, that you might not have expected that really helped everybody to get through was number one, if you reach a point where it becomes so painful, so hard, so difficult that if you're self-centered, you quit. You have to
Wow.
be in those moments where you are carrying a log down the beach with a couple of other guys and it weighs 200 pounds and you've been awake for 48 hours and you're in the middle of a 2-hour log evolution. The pain that your body is experiencing, it's not like a hard workout pain. Like this is a different level of soul searing challenge. And if you're just focused on yourself, you'll quit. But if you're willing to say to yourself, you know what, the guy to my left needs me and the guy to my right needs me, and they're still here, and I can take one more step for those guys, those are the guys who make it. The guys who are outside of their own head and actually thinking about the people around them. And I'll come back if you're interested and make a leadership points about that later. But the second quality that I found, much to my delight and that I wouldn't have expected, is, and this isn't universally true, but almost everybody who makes it through buds has a really good sense of humor. Because it sucks so bad. It is so hard and so terrible and so difficult that you have to be able to find a way to laugh when you're going through the hardship.
Yeah.
Eric, we have a close family friend
Who's thinking that?
who says if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So I think that's a perfect what's going on there. So yes, totally, that's awesome. It makes sense.
Yeah, one of our phrases that we used to use was we called Hell Week the best time you never want to have again.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was actually like, I look back on it and it was so fun. Like we had an amazing time going through Hell Week with all these guys. And, you know, I never want to do it again, but you do find a way to have fun.
And how many guys started Hell Week and then 21 finished? How many were left?
Yeah. So, you know, I can't remember exactly with Hell Week. So the buds numbers, like I said, were over 220 started the original buds class and 21 graduated. Hell Week actually comes, at least for us, I think it came in the 5th week of buds. So I'm guessing for you, Evan, but maybe it was like 180 dudes started, were still around at that point. And then I don't know, maybe 40-ish made it out the other side. Yeah. So something like that. Hell Week is the big filter. You have a couple of other really hard tests as well that come after Hell Week, but Hell Week is the big filter.
And Eric, when people sign up they want to be a Navy SEAL, right? And you sign the sign-up sheet, it's all laughing and giggling, like we're gonna become Navy SEALs, and then it gets into it. But when you get that core of 220, what is the demographic of that group of men? Like, where do they come from? What kind of walks of life are you a part of there?
Yeah. So what's really cool, man, is that it was actually interesting for me. So just a little side story on this was that I was an old man when I went to buds. I was 26 because I had actually already gone. I'd finished grad school before I came, and I had also been living abroad for the last 4 years. And so when I came back and I joined the Navy, it was also kind of my reintroduction to the United States. And one of the things that's great is that you know, anybody, once they're 18 years old, they can sign up to enter buds training. But I'd say that the average age, especially of the guys who graduated, tended to be older. It's probably closer to like 21, 22 years old. I think that little bit of extra maturity certainly helped. So, and you have guys from literally all over the country, every income demographic, urban, rural, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, everybody's there together. And you're all united in this common purpose of making it through buds.
Eric, I kind of want to back up a little bit to before you made it to be a Navy SEAL. How old were you when you first decided this is something I want to do with my life? And what inspired this journey to become a Navy SEAL?
Yeah. So, Ethan, we'd probably have to go back to figure out exactly what year it was. We'd probably have to go back and figure out exactly when the first Rambo movie came out. And also Top Gun. Okay, so those were the original Top Gun. Those were some of my influences. But
Okay.
but in addition to that, I grew up. My dad's dad, my paternal grandfather, had served in the Navy, and he was in World War II. He was actually on the aircraft carrier, the Enterprise, at Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
And you may remember the Enterprise was the only aircraft carrier was actually out to sea during the Pearl Harbor attack, and he fought through in the Pacific during the entire war. He died when my dad was 6 years old. So
Wow.
my whole life growing up, my paternal grandfather's picture in his Navy uniform with his World War II medals hung over my dad's dresser. And in fact, right now, I'm back in Missouri today. It's actually upstairs in my room today.
Nice.
That's
So
lovely.
special.
Yeah. And so I think that somehow in my kind of child subconscious, I kind of seeing that every day maybe gave me a sense that I wanted to do something in the Navy. Then there were probably two other influences. One was that as I mentioned, I was older. I was 26. I had finished my dissertation on how international humanitarian organizations work with kids in war zones. So I'd worked with child refugees in Bosnia and Rwanda. I'd worked with kids who'd lost limbs to landmines in Cambodia. And one of the things that I came to believe very strongly was if you really care about people, then it's not enough to just talk about it or do humanitarian work. But if you really care about people, you have to be willing to defend them. And so that led me to think about the military. And then, finally I was 26, but I still had, 16-year-old desires to jump out of planes and blow things up and do demolitions and have fun. And so that also
Yeah.
attracted me to the SEAL teams.
Yeah, the adventure of it is
Yes.
definitely a big lead.
Yes.
But so, Eric, this is fascinating. So I'm 25. I'll be 26 in April. So I kind of know like where you were, like I guess timeline wise, but going further back, let's jump back a decade because you went, I think it was was it Rwanda at 20 years old or Bosnia?
Yeah, I was in Bosnia when I was 20 and then Rwanda when I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's you're doing all these humanitarian aids globally, and then from there you go to one of the most prestigious universities in the world at Oxford. When you graduated from Oxford and made the decision to go to become a SEAL, your peers from Oxford must have thought you were crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, and it wasn't just my peers. It was, I think if you would have taken a survey of my closest 100 friends and family, it would have been unanimous that I was crazy.
I was gonna say, I
Well,
would imagine those peers from Oxford went on to be like doctors, finance, tech, and you kind of totally went a completely different route.
yeah, they went to consulting firms, they went to academia, they went to all of these different routes. And yeah, I signed up to be an ensign in the United States Navy. And it was probably the best, not the best, I don't know, but it was certainly one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. I'm really, really grateful to myself for having made that decision.
Do you think if you would have gone to an American university, like let's say Mizzou, for example, being in Missouri,
Yeah.
that you would have had those same desires?
I do. I think that the desire to serve and the desire to serve in the military in particular was something that was kind of deeply rooted in me. I do think that having both the international humanitarian experience and the experience of actually living and studying abroad, what it also did was it gave me a real appreciation for the country. It gave me an appreciation
Yeah.
for America in a way that I wouldn't have had I just stayed in Missouri. As I stepped outside of the country, I was able to come back with, a lot of insight and love for my country.
Yeah,
No doubt.
beautiful. Eric, for most people who go through life, they never really experience what it's like to be in a war zone, to be somewhere where there's not peace. And you firsthand being a Navy SEAL and going overseas, what's the best way for you to explain that to your regular American?
Yeah. It's such a good question, Ethan. Let me think about that for a moment. You know,
Mhm.
I think that one of the difficulties that Americans face is that there is so much that we take for granted in the country that is just not part of a lot of people's everyday existence. And when you're in a place like in Iraq, like in Afghanistan, or even doing humanitarian work, and you're in a Bosnia or Rwanda or a Gaza Strip or a Cambodia, um, you you begin to see and to sense how insecure human life can be. That when you're in a refugee camp, you're talking with, these are all people, they've all lost their homes. Many of them had lost relatives in the violence. They're now in a place where they don't know exactly where their next meal is coming from. They're not sure what their future is going to look like. And all of that I'd call kind of social furniture that's sort of around most people's lives, it's all ripped away. And you're kind of down to your essence. And I think that is one of the things about serving in a war zone that that frankly, it's one of the things that a lot of people actually like and appreciate, is that they're there and they're like, man, I felt so alive. It was just me and my team. It was me and my team and my mission. And that was it. And we woke up every day and everything we did mattered. Everything was important. And that really, it's one of the reasons why, again, as hard as it can be, a lot of people look back on those times fondly because of that sense of camaraderie and that sense of mission. And I think that's one of the big things that's so different, Ethan, about being in a war zone and kind of being in your normal life.
How long was like the longest amount of time you were away from home?
Yeah, Ethan, I was really fortunate. My longest deployment was 6 months. So I did a couple of 6 month stints. I was in Iraq. My 4 deployments were Iraq, Afghanistan, Southeast Asia, and the Horn of Africa. So for example, I left for Iraq in, I think it was October of 2006. Came back in April of 2007, and
Wow.
that was, it was a long deployment. You were obviously there for the holidays. You're there for, as we're thinking about the holiday season, you're there for Thanksgiving, you're there for Christmas, you're there for New
Yeah.
Year's. And you're there, and the guys who you're with, they become your family.
No doubt. Like when you were out there and those 6 months, what's something that initially, right off the bat, was something you didn't expect? Like maybe a feeling or like a sense of gratitude that maybe came in seeing these different countries and the way they live.
Well, I still remember my very first trip ever. I was 19 years old, and I actually went over to China. It was the first trip I'd ever taken, and I do remember very vividly having a sense of appreciation for the freedom that we had in the United States of America, and how viscerally I could tell the difference between the United States and China on that trip. And then the next summer, when I was in Bosnia doing the humanitarian work, there was just a really profound sense of gratitude. I don't know when I was 20 if I would have exactly phrased it that way, but just, the fact that you're growing up, and most of the time when you're growing up, yeah, you might see a few homeless people from time to time, but your general sense is that like everybody has a home, that most
Yeah.
kids can go to school, and then you're in a refugee camp and you realize that none of that is true. And again, I think it just gives you a real sense of gratitude for what you have. The other great advantage of having those kinds of hard experiences is it puts a lot of the rest of life's challenges in perspective.
On the hunt for legendary wings, Buffalo's in Bloomington, Indiana, and Carmel, Indiana has you covered. Crowned top 10 wings in the nation by USA Today, our wings are a fan favorite. Dip into Mrs. Louie's famous sweet Q sauce for that sweet and tangy kick. Visit Buffalo's and wing it like a pro.
When you are home and you talk about having these experiences overseas of being present and feeling alive, what are some things back in the United States that make you feel present and alive?
Well, number one, I'll just say, Evan, I think it's so important for men to find ways to create these experiences where they can feel present and alive. I think the world
Yeah.
today is actually much harder than when I was younger because, they have this phone in everybody's hands. It's literally designed to addict you. It's designed to pull you out of your present moment. It is
Yeah.
designed to sap your attention, and so important for men to find ways to be very present. So number one, for me, is being a dad. When I am with Joshua, when I am with Jacob, and it can be doing anything. It can be when we're on a big adventure and we're, canoeing or hiking, or just something as simple as actually driving them to their soccer practice.
Yeah.
When I'm with them, one of the great things about kids is that kids are very present, right? They're
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the moment, and so that, for me, playing with them, being with them is certainly one. And then the other thing is that I also keep up a really regular and intense athletic practice. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I find that when you're pushing your body to the limit, it really requires you to be present and to be aware in a way
Mm.
that you might not otherwise be. So, for me, I've been doing track and field. I did some free diving this past summer, which was incredible.
Nice.
Those kinds of experiences really keep you in the present moment.
So I'm happy you mentioned your training. So how has your training evolved since your Navy SEAL days?
Well, look, one of the things that I've done as an athlete, and I recommend this a lot of times to young athletes, I've been very fortunate. I didn't start out with this intention, but one of the things that I've done is about every 7 years or so, I've switched major sports. And I think it's allowed my body to stay very vibrant and adaptive. So I can get really good at something, create excellence in it, but then also switch sports so that your body doesn't get into the same patterns. I mean, my
I like
first
that.
yeah, my first real major sport was boxing, and that was what I did in college and in graduate school. And that was a fantastic sport. And then I kind of went from there into the SEAL teams. Then I started doing long distance running. Then I moved from that to Taekwondo. And then after Taekwondo, I've been doing the track and field most recently. And so all of these, by engaging in the different disciplines, it really helps your body to stay fresh and to
Yes.
adapt. Um,
Yeah.
and the other really important and I think most underutilized training principle is that you got to have fun. Like so
Yeah.
many times, so
Well
many
said.
times when people think about working out, right? And this is part of working out. They think about the grind and the hard and the dig, and you got to get up at 5 a.m. and you got to do what sucks, and you got to like that's part of life, and you have to be able to get in that gear. That's an important gear to be in. But it's also the case that people will naturally do things that they love. And so I also think it's really important to find ways to build training that you love. And so, have a group of guys who you have fun with when you get out there and you're boxing or taekwondo or track. It kind of doesn't matter what the sport is, but you get out there and you've got a good crew with you. And also find ways to be playful. It's also, I'll say the last thing I'll say on that, it's a really important element of maintaining athletic prowess is play. A lot of times people think that kids don't get hurt because they're young. But one of the reasons why kids don't often get hurt bad is because they're playing all the time. If you watch kids play tag or play some made up game, they're moving their body in all of these different ways. It's very, very dynamic. And it's how human beings were made to move. And then you get guys who, they get into their 30s or their 40s and they're hitting the gym and they're bench pressing and they're on the treadmill and they're kind of moving in one plane of motion. And then all of a sudden they go out to play softball and they blow their Achilles or they tear their knee apart.
Yeah.
And so
That's a great point.
yeah, so having that kind of element of play, it not only is fun, but it also forces your body to move in different ways. I've got this great group of guys I work out with, and we do this thing called the Gladiator Guild. This amazing trainer named Michael Palzer, who's started this thing called the Gladiator Guild. And there are these different stations, and we'll go to the different stations. But, some guys will be at the pull-up station, and then you can just guys will flip upside down and start doing rows upside down, right? And or they're doing kettlebells and they'll figure out their own new kettlebell routine. So the idea is, it's a bunch of gladiators, but everybody's having fun and everybody's supporting each other, and it's part of what helps build great athletes.
Totally agree. Yeah, that's great perspective. And I love like the 7-year adaptive kind of mindset, switching it up. But Eric, so something I'm really curious in is time management. You've
Yeah.
been a governor, you're an author, you're a father. How are you strategic with your time management, building out your schedule, and then from there thinking in days, weeks, months, and even years?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do, Merrick, is I think that it's very important if you're gonna manage yourself well, is to have a very clear sense for your own identity. So a lot of times people start by looking at the calendar. And they're like, okay, I'm going to manage my time. I'm going to set up my schedule and I'm going to get up every day at 5 and I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y. But that can always, number one, it can break down. Like somebody gets sick, you get a phone call from home. There's all these things that can interrupt your schedule. What's most important is to have a sense for your own identity. If you say to yourself, not I need to get up at 5 a.m., but instead you say, I'm an athlete or I'm a warrior, then what happens is when you have that conception of yourself, then if you're an athlete, then you do what athletes do. And even if for some reason your 5 a.m. workout gets blown, you're an athlete, you still get out there and you find a way to make it happen. If you're a warrior, you still find a way to train. And one of the things that happens, I think, to a lot of guys is that they get too locked into the schedule itself. And instead, if you have a lot of self-clarity, look, I'm an athlete, I'm a warrior, I'm a papa, I'm a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur, whatever it is for you, and you've got a clear sense for your identity, and you also have a clear vision about what you are going to create in your life, then you will find a way to make that happen no matter what happens in your schedule. No matter if there is a traffic jam or, you get a mini family emergency or you get injured, or no matter what happens in life, if you've got that sense of identity and that sense of vision, you will find a way to make the time work for you.
One of the things that you've talked about in the past that I think really well complements that is ability to segment your time.
Yes.
And I think that compartmentalization is a huge factor of staying present.
Yeah, it's so important, Merrick. So yeah, the whole idea of segmenting is that you break big tasks down into small tasks, right? And you can break things down smaller and smaller and smaller so that no matter what the mission is in front of you, you might know that the only thing that you have to do right now is you have to breathe and you have to take one step with your right foot. And you got to take another breath and take another step with your left foot. And if you're mountaineering, like that's kind of all you need to do. You just keep you just keep moving. And so with segmenting, yeah, you break everything down into its smallest possible step, and then that allows you to take action. One of the things that holds guys back a lot of times is that they will envision for themselves a really, really big goal, and it actually feels intimidating, and it feels like it's too far away from who they are at the present moment. When you segment, you figure out this is all I need to do right now to get to that next goal, and you make it very achievable. You make that next step very achievable. That also helps you because, as a man, you should have goals that are so difficult that you have to become a different kind of man in order to achieve them.
Love that. Well, they
And
say in order to become someone you've never been, you got to do things you've never done.
exactly. Yes. 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 The
Look at
way
this
the
guy.
way my boxing coach used to say it, Ethan, is he'd say, if you want different, do different.
Well, there's an idea that I've been reading on recently that if you set goals that are like way out of your league, huge goals, and you set them for a shorter amount of time, that even if you don't achieve that goal, you'll be way further ahead than you would have been if you set a goal that was within your range.
Well, Ethan,
And you'll
that's
probably
actually
exceed that.
the Elon Musk. He says, figure out what your 10-year goal is and try to achieve it in 6 months.
Yeah.
You'll most likely fail, but it will be much quicker than 10 years.
Yes, that's the general idea of it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And what's also important about the point you're making, Evan, and what you were saying, Ethan, is that it's not just the setting of the goals, but it's often the fact that a big goal is actually easier to get motivated around than a small one, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a really small goal and you're like, oh, I'm going to try and improve a little bit here, like, oh, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if a big goal is going to demand that you become a different kind of person in order to achieve it, that's exciting. That's invigorating.
Yeah.
That's a journey. That's a place where you start looking at yourself differently in the mirror every day, and you can see the man that you're becoming.
And I want to know your thoughts on this. I feel like now more than ever, young men are lacking purpose, a purpose-driven life. And then when you lack that purpose, like you mentioned with the small goals and not really, it's no big deal if you don't achieve it. But people are lacking that drive to go on a journey and do something significant. Do you find that to be true, especially in our country right now?
I think it is true, Ethan. And I think a lot of it is true because of the way the culture has shifted. And it's almost purposefully designed to rob men of their sense of purpose, right? I mean, if you pick up your phone and you're scrolling in that phone for a couple hours, you are a fantastic consumer. You're doing everything that the system wants you to do. You become very profitable for them, and you've lost
Yep.
yourself.
Yep.
And you have so many, it's not just the phone that's in everybody's hands. It's the constant movies. It's the sports betting. It's all of these things are designed
Distractions.
to literally distract you and literally take your life force.
Yeah.
The only way that they win is if they take away your life force and your energy away from your purpose. And they're designed to be addictive. So I think that it is, to your point, I think it is absolutely harder today for men to do that. And it's also why it's so important for men to support other men in this. One of the other things that's happened in the culture is that most men today feel much more isolated than they did even 25 years ago. If you look at the statistics around the average number of friendships that men have, a lot of young men, 25 and under, you ask them, do you have someone who you can call if things go really wrong? And the number of guys who have zero friends who they feel like they can call it's really tragic. And if you look at the numbers of close friendships that most men have had throughout their lives, that number has been declining. Again, you ask yourself why. When I was a kid, there was no way to entertain yourself you didn't have a computer, you didn't have a phone, you didn't have any of these things. Like if you wanted to entertain yourself, you had to go out into the streets with your brothers and your friends and your neighbors. And by the way, nobody had a cell phone, so nobody could call you. You had to go out on your own and figure out a way to create a game and have fun or ride your bike somewhere or get into a bit of trouble. So what happened was that you were not only creating your own adventure, but you're also doing it with your friends. And today, the system is designed to isolate you. You are profitable to the system when you are alone on your phone betting on sports. You're profitable to the system when you're alone on your phone watching a movie. You are not profitable to the system when you are hanging out with 4 dudes doing a ruck run in your neighborhood.
So Eric, you
Yeah.
having young kids, how do you like help them find a purpose and make sure they're not always consuming the wrong things?
Yeah. So Evan, one of the things we do is really important is that like there are no screens in my house. So no, they don't have phones. On
Nice.
occasion, I'll let them read a book on my iPad, but 90% of the time they read actual physical books.
Yep.
And they only use their computers for doing schoolwork. So number one, no screens. Number two, one of the things that I think we have to do today as dads is we got to be a little more conscious about creating this time for our kids. So, of course, my kids play sports and they do things. But for example, the summer that my boys were 7 and 8, I created this challenge for them where they could become pages. So you might know in most warrior cultures, there's a couple of significant moments in the lives of young men. One is when they become 7. All right. So when Spartan youth would live with their moms till they were 6, and then when they became 7, they'd go and they'd live with their dads. And if you've ever been around 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, you can tell there's a significant difference between a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. You don't want 6-year-olds hanging around a military camp, right? But kids who are 7, like they can go out and they can fetch wood, they can light fires, they can build things. It's just a significant developmental shift.
Yeah.
7 in a medieval culture was also the age at which you could become a page. At 13, you could become a squire, and then as an adult, you could become a knight. So when my boys were 7 and 8, I set up this was during the summer, a list of 30 labors that they had to accomplish in order to become pages. So one of them
That's
was
cool.
that they had to swim across the lake and back without a life jacket, and it's not far; it's probably like 50 meters. They had to. I dropped them off a mile from the house, and they had to make it back on their own. Right, and again, I was down the road. I wasn't that far from them. I knew where they were, but they had to make it back on their own. I gave them a map, and they had to go out into the woods and use the map to find this little treasure. They had to learn how to build and light a fire on their own. They had to learn how to clean and bandage a wound. They had to learn the military alphabet. So all of these different tasks, and then at the end of the summer, I did a ceremony for them where they got their own axe. In fact, it's sitting right over here in the office. They received an axe, and I officially inducted them into the ancient order of the Pirate Knights of Coyote Bear Cabin. So this was obviously,
cool.
our family thing. But to your point, Evan, I think you have to be really conscientious about doing it for young men to help them grow up in that way.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is absolutely amazing. Eric, it's clear that you are very drawn to a primal way of living
Mhm.
and even like a stoic kind of energy. I heard you mention that earlier. Another thing you mentioned earlier that I want to learn more about is the premeditations of evil. Can you share more about that and what the premeditations of evil are?
Yeah, for sure, Merrick. So, the premeditation of evil is one of the core Stoic techniques for performance in tough situations. And the basic idea is that your mind can help you encounter a situation before you've encountered it physically. And if you've imagined what you're going to do when something hard happens, it's much easier to do it physically if you've premeditated on it, if you've thought about it ahead of time. So I'll give you a very practical example on this, which is that one of the things that you have to do in BUDS in the SEAL team training is that you have to swim 50 meters underwater. And the exact test is that you jump off the ledge, go into the water, you do a front flip underwater, and then you swim 25 meters across to the end of the pool, and then you got to turn around and you got to swim 25 meters back. Now, no matter how good of an athlete you are, no matter how much time you spent in and around the water, everyone runs out of oxygen on the 50-meter swim. So what you can do is, of course, you practice it physically and you do 5 meters, then 10, then 15, then 20, then 25, then you do the turn and you do 30. So of course you practice it physically. But one of the other things that you can do is that you can practice it mentally. You can visualize. And you guys have seen Olympic athletes do this a lot of times. You'll see downhill skiers doing it. You'll see Formula One drivers. They're visualizing what they're going to do on the course. Well, what we would do is for the 50-meter underwater swim, you imagine what you're going to do when you feel like you're completely out of oxygen. Like, what am I going to do?
Wow.
So for myself, my technique was I imagined myself running out of oxygen, and you get that feeling where your body starts to convulse and it's trying to as the CO2 builds up, your body starts to convulse. So you'd imagine yourself convulsing. And I would just say to myself, I'd say, stay relaxed. And as I put my hands, I would stay relaxed. And that was my very simple mantra to myself. And I practiced that mentally. And then when the test came, of course, the moment comes where you're absolutely out of oxygen. Your body feels like it's starting to convulse. Every impulse in you wants to shoot for the surface, but because you've been there before mentally, you've done the premeditation, it's much easier to then just stay relaxed and you keep swimming and you complete the evolution.
Really,
That's a great concept.
Yeah.
Think when things are gonna happen in life that are not good, but if you mentally prepare yourself, they're not gonna be as bad. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're going to find a way. And it's not just that they're not going to be as bad, but you're going to be able to navigate them easier. And you can do that. You can do that, if you have to have a hard conversation with somebody. You can do that as you're thinking about preparing for a 10K, you're preparing for a marathon. You actually not just train physically, but then you imagine what's going to happen when I am feeling absolutely exhausted and I got to push hard that final mile. What am I going to do? If the first time you've ever been there is in the moment, it's much more likely that you're going to collapse. If you've actually been there mentally, then you're probably going to do what you've actually imagined yourself doing before.
Well, and being somebody with that state of mind, I feel like that's an important characteristic of being a leader. And looking back at your life, I'm sure you've always felt that. Being a Navy SEAL, being a father, being a governor, you've always had a leadership position. What are some other characteristics that separate leaders from followers?
I think one of the most underappreciated qualities of good leadership is that you love and care for the people who you're leading. And when you
Yeah.
do that, they know it. Now, not
Mhm.
not every leader does this, but when your people know that you really care about them, when they know that you are sacrificing for them, when they know that you are willing to set the example and you are willing to do the hardest job in order to run a successful team, family, company, government, people can sense that. And I think it's also why it's so important as a leader to demonstrate that you're willing to, that you're not going to ask anybody to do anything that you haven't done or aren't willing to do yourself. You set the
Mhm.
example by your own practice, and that shapes the team. And people know intuitively, they know that leadership is hard. They know that human beings make mistakes. They know that nobody's perfect. But if you demonstrate to people that you're willing to do the hardest things, they know that you care about them and you listen, then you're going to have a fantastic team.
I would imagine that leadership in your eyes, you've had some failures in your 20s and 30s that allowed you to be even a better leader today.
Oh, look, you have failures your whole life. Um, if you're not failing in some part of your life, then you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough, right?
Mhm.
Every great leader, every great man is always pushing. You're always at the edge of failure. And it's when you're at those edges, that's the place where you're really growing. So it's
Mhm.
it's important in your life to always have those places where you're like, man, came in second place, came in third place, came in
Mhm.
fourth place, didn't finish,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But you get out there and you push yourself so that then you can grow. And
Yes.
the pain of the failure leads to the wisdom. The suffering of the hardship leads to the strength. The tragedy leads to the joy. And there is no path to wisdom and strength without the pain and the suffering. So pushing yourself through it doesn't mean something's wrong. It usually means that you're actually on the right path.
And it's funny you say that. I think that Ryan Holiday book is called Wisdom Takes Work. So I think that's well said on
Mm,
your end. Eric,
thanks.
something I want you're an author yourself. You've written a couple books. How has your definition of resilience changed since you initially wrote Resilience?
Wow, what a great question, Merrick. What a great question. Well, I'll say there's so much of resilience that has uh, stayed relevant for me because a lot of it was rooted in ancient wisdom, right? The stuff that's been around for thousands of years doesn't get old. Um, so so
True.
so so much of it has sustained. I think, though, I'm much wiser than I was then, certainly in terms of the importance of faith and resilience. That at the end of the day, there are certain times where everything looks difficult, everything looks painful, and you failed and suffered, and you look out and it's just more failure and more suffering and more pain in front of you. And there is a great place where you, at the end of the day, you just have to have faith. And
Mm.
it's often beyond reason. It's beyond something that you might be able to explain to anybody else. You might not even be able to explain it to yourself. But I'd say if I were going to rewrite the resilience book today, Merrick, I'd probably put a deeper emphasis on faith than I did a decade ago.
Well,
Wow,
perhaps a
amazing.
part two.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, I am working on another book right now. It's tentatively called The Ultimate Rebellion Handbook. And it's a book about how a man can take back his soul from a culture that's trying to take it away.
I like that.
That's very fitting for
Well,
this
yeah.
current state of time.
Eric, you mentioned ancient wisdom, and I want to come back to that and ask, what is your relationship like studying different ancient wisdom, ancient books, old text, the Stoic, the ancient Greeks, maybe Romans? What have you studied in your lifetime, and what do you recommend people our age, in their 20s, young men, learn and delve into to become better men?
Such a good question, Ethan. You know, one of my favorite books is a book called The Greek Way by Edith Hamilton. And Edith Hamilton wrote just a really brilliant book about how the ancient Greeks thought about wisdom, how they thought about courage, how they thought about strength, how they thought about beauty. It's a very accessible book, and it's one I highly recommend. There's another book I used to recommend a lot to the veterans who I worked with. It was called Shop Class as Soulcraft by a guy named Matthew Crawford. And it's a book about the importance of learning how to do things with your hands. So many young men today grow up in a culture where they're not asked to do things with their hands. And it's important, whether you're working or as an athlete, to really learn how to do things in the world and create some mastery with your hands. And in that book, Crawford does a fantastic job of talking about how that really shapes you as a man. And it's a very thoughtful book. So those are two of the books that I probably frequently recommend to guys. And obviously you can look at some of the original Aristotelian texts. You can look at the Platonic texts. And there's wisdom to be had there. But one of the things that the Greeks also did was that they didn't think of philosophy as being something that was in a classroom. Today, one of the reasons why philosophy feels so abstract to guys is because they think of it as something that exists in some college classroom somewhere. Like, how is this relevant to my life? In fact, you know, Socrates was a soldier who actually taught on the streets. If you read the Platonic dialogues, almost all of them, a lot of them are taking place in the gymnasium, in the athletic gymnasium where guys would train. So having conversations with other men and thinking about what it meant to be a good man was part of life. And you judged a philosopher not based on the quality of his ideas, but on how well those ideas helped other people to lead good lives. And I think that that's one of the things, again, we've lost in the current culture. It would drive Aristotle, Socrates, Plato nuts if they heard that, thousands of years later, the only place where people were reading their stuff was in a classroom. Right? This was
Or an iPad.
Yeah, philosophy
or
was
an
meant,
iPad.
right. Philosophy was meant to be lived, and that's really the test of it.
I love that.
I love that as
Well,
well.
I think that there's a Greek quote, correct me if I'm wrong, something along the lines of sound body, sound mind, sound life, something like that. You know what
Yeah,
I'm talking about?
I might not know that one specifically, but it's absolutely true. If you've got a sound body, a sound mind, a sound spirit, you're gonna have a sound life.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yes.
spirit.
There
But
you go.
yeah, they say that if your body's not right, your mind's not right, and your mind won't be right if your body's not right.
It's so important what you just said, Ethan,
Mhm.
because it's really key for guys. And a lot of guys, if they're having a hard time, this is for all of your listeners right now, they're in a tough place emotionally, they're struggling, they're dealing with hardship, they're dealing with self-doubt. The quickest way to change your state is to engage your body. You will feel different after you do 20 push-ups than you did before, guaranteed. That is
Yep.
the way
Yeah.
that, and men were meant to be physical. Men were meant to move. One of the reasons you see so much, illness in society isn't just because, there's so much terrible processed food and and there's people who are being so sedentary, but it's also that guys don't move enough, and you need to move in order to move emotions through your body. We were meant to be very physical, very active men, and that is the number one way that you can quickly change your state of being. Exercise, you could get rid of a huge percentage of depression medications if you replaced it with quality exercise for men.
All day.
Yeah, we're
Amen.
completely aligned.
yeah.
Eric, we want to conclude. So at the beginning, we mentioned that this is a show that highlights the lives of the extraordinary. With that said, what advice do you give to those who strive to live an extraordinary life?
Yeah. I think that I'd say three quick things, Merrick.
Yes.
Number one is that it's right there for you. A lot of times when guys think about living an extraordinary life, they're looking at other people on social media, or they're thinking about something that is outside of themselves. Your extraordinary life is with you right now. You just have to find the way to take the next step. That's number one. Number two is to find a good model. Okay. So one of the things I would say to a lot of the wounded veterans who we worked with is I'd say if I handed you guys a giant, call it a giant trash bag or giant canvas bag full of puzzle pieces, and I said, hey, make this puzzle. And I said, what would you ask for? You said, well, I'd want to know the picture. I'd want to know what I'm trying to create. When you have a model in your life, that model essentially serves as the picture. Life hands you pieces, piece after piece after piece. And when you have a model for what you're trying to create, when you have a vision, then you know how to put all of the pieces together. And then the last thing, relatedly, is that the most important thing you're going to think in your entire life is your thoughts about yourself. The internal dialogue that you have with yourself, the things that you are thinking about yourself, will shape your future. They will shape your life. And if you take mastery over that dialogue, then you will be master of your own life. If you allow the culture, if you allow what's in your phone, if you allow what's in movies, if you allow what other people say to shape how you think of yourself, you're turning over all of your power to them. So you do those three things, and it's not going to be easy. I guarantee you there's going to be plenty of hardship and pain and difficulty along the way, but there's also going to be a lot of wisdom, a lot of love, and a lot of joy.
Beautiful.
Eric, that's so important. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with Ethan, Evan, and myself.
Thank you so much.
Love your energy. Love what you're about.
Yeah.
Hope to do this again in the near future. Keep kicking ass. Where can everyone keep up with you and your work if they want to connect?
I'm at ericgreitens.com. So it's just EricGreitens.com. That's the website, and all of the socials are on there. And likewise, Merrick, Ethan, Evan, tremendous pleasure to be on with you guys. And I'd be happy to come back on anytime.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Eric, be well.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank